This season of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast is proudly supported by My Music Staff.
Welcome to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, the place where teachers from around the world meet to share innovative ideas about music education. Listen and learn as we help you motivate your students, grow your income, expand your studio, and become a more creative piano teacher.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome back to Season 4 of the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. My name is Tim Topham, your host for the show, and if this is your first time here, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're a long-time listener, thank you again for giving me your time today. I hope you've been enjoying this season. You're currently listening to episode number 148, and a very special welcome to my Inner Circle Piano Teaching community members. The Creative Piano Teaching Podcast, of course, is your home for inspiration, ideas, business, and teaching strategies to help support your teaching and grow your studio. One of the big challenges for teachers who are keen to expand their studios by hiring other teachers and building their student numbers is, of course, that they're going to run out of space probably at some stage. So today, my guest and we're going to be unpacking commercial leases, spaces, agreements, and how she got from one room in a rented space to her own commercial warehouse for her studio, which is now over 200 students and growing rapidly. This question around leases and moving into spaces and things like that, they're questions get asked quite regularly by teachers who are keen to expand. So I really hope this discussion helps guide your thinking and answer some of those questions if this is something you've struggled with or maybe you're thinking about in the future. Today's show notes and full transcript are available now at timtopham.com/episode 148. My guest today is the founder of Naptown Sings. With an unwavering passion for music education, she opened the Naptown Sing Studio to offer a rich and exciting musical experience to local Annapolis youth. She holds 2 music degrees from the University of Maryland School of Music, College Park, a Bachelor of Music in Vocal Performance, and a Bachelor of Music Education in K-12 Vocal and General Music. She recently received a Master of Music Education degree from Anderson University. On top of running the studio, my guest teaches general music at Rogers Heights Elementary in Prince George's County part-time. Her choirs are award-winning in the county. She also collaborated with a 3-member team to rewrite the county's elementary choral curriculum. She directs the studio's popular glee clubs, teaches most of the group classes, and gives private voice lessons to people of varied ages, styles, and abilities. Welcome to the show today, Sophia Hardesty.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
I've been looking forward to chatting with you because I've had lots of teachers ask in our group and online and me personally by email about questions to do with expanding their studio. And I was kind of tracking what you were doing online and the answers you were giving to people's questions in Facebook groups. And I thought, this is the person I need to have a chat with because you've been doing some great expansion recently. So let's just step it back before we talk about that. Can you tell us what your studio was like when you first started and how long ago was that?
Sure thing. So it was 2013. I think that's 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. I actually started out of a friend's studio here in Annapolis, Maryland. He had begged me to start teaching some lessons at his studio because he had just opened it and he wanted to have more teachers on board. So I did. And then I had this idea for a pop music glee club for kids. So it's actually a singing class. Mm-hmm. And so I started that. I had 2 members. I think I got up to 4 members after a year, and everything was so slow. And then, but I kept with it. And so after a year, I had 12 members. 3 months later, I had 24 members.
Oh, wow.
And it just kept growing to the point where my friend said, "Hey, it's great that you're teaching out of my studio, but you've grown so much that I don't have enough room for me to teach my own lessons. Can you please find your own space?" So I moved right down the street from him. I found a room for $800 a month, this tiny room that I still fit somehow, 20 students in a room at once. And with that, Naptown Sings and Plays was born because that was the name of the glee club. Naptown is the nickname for Annapolis, Maryland. So Naptown.
I saw that in your email and wondered, I thought that was a really cool name, but I didn't know where it came from.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the modern nickname for the town that we live in. Right. So I had this little room And I
What
figured, okay,
building was
well,
the room in? Where did you find that room?
it was actually a shared space, and that's where I've been for the past 2.5 years, up until almost 3 years, up until the move.
Hmm.
It was a space that had just frontage kind of in a downtown area of Annapolis. And I shared the building with a church, a Reiki studio, a makeup studio, and let me tell you, that's not ideal to have a music school shared with all of these things that require quiet.
Right, of course.
So we started with one room in that building, and since I had
So,
the space,
yeah,
oh
so
yeah,
it was
sorry,
sorry, it was a commercial lease agreement, or
it's a
was one
commercial.
of the tenants subletting it to various people?
So the landlord basically leased out different rooms in this kind of artsy office building
Got it. Okay. Yep.
to different businesses
And where did you find it? How did you find that room?
from a friend,
All right.
actually.
Okay.
So I kind of made a posting on Facebook and said, hey, I'm looking for a commercial space for Naptown Sings and Plays. And this friend of mine who was actually in the back of the building at the time, who owned an art studio, said, hey, there's actually this room available. It would be perfect for you. Next thing I know, the landlord's calling me. The rent was so cheap, I kind of couldn't pass it up. So that started my journey.
Got it. Got it. And so it was just a small one room in a shared place with all these other places that needed quiet. You're in there
Yes.
doing Glee Club singing with what ended up being 24 people.
I think it ended up, it's about 70 now, but yeah,
Wow.
in different classes. So I hired some teachers and added piano lessons, voice lessons, guitar lessons.
Okay. Whoa. Okay. Now you've just like jumped. So hang on. All right. Let's get this straight. So you were teaching in someone else's studio. You were invited. We need a vocal, I assume it was a vocal teacher to come and sing, to work with students. You weren't actually teaching in that first studio. You started the Glee Club straight away, or were you doing individual teaching as well?
I was doing individual teaching and the Glee clubs.
Got it. Okay. So that's going along. It's making small progress, but suddenly it starts to grow. It gains traction and you go, okay, well, the studio owner said, well, sorry, you're a bit big now, which is a really exciting position to be in. So you went and found the new space and then you continued to grow. At what point did you decide to, and in the new space, you were also offering lessons as well as the Glee Club?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, but it was just you teaching and you running the club.
It was just me at first, but after a couple months, I hired more teachers.
Right. So how did you know the time was right to hire more teachers?
Well, honestly, I needed to pay my rent. And I was teaching elementary school full-time on top of owning this little studio.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so you were a full-time school teacher.
I was.
Doing this in your after hours and weekends, I assume.
But of course, I couldn't teach every day because I was teaching elementary school. So the logical solution was to hire teachers to teach for me and kind of start to turn this into a real music school.
Right. So you actually hired teachers to teach for you during the day when you couldn't, and you kept teaching elementary school for a while, I assume.
And it wasn't during the day, it was in the afternoons. So I would teach, I don't remember, I think it was Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then my teachers would get the Monday afternoon spot or the Wednesday afternoon spot or Saturday morning.
Right.
Things
Okay.
like that.
And so you had enough students, obviously, to be able to afford the teachers, and you decided to step back from a few students. Is that right? You sort of handed over some of your students to your new teachers, or were there just so many pouring in the door that they took on new ones?
So it didn't pour in quickly, but there was, with Facebook marketing and word of mouth, there was an interest there. My teachers are independent contractors, so it's not necessarily about affording a teacher. It's here's your lesson time, or here's your block. I'm going to try and fill it for you as fast as I can, which got me into marketing. And here's what you get per hour, and then this is what I get, basically. So if you think about it, I don't know if I can afford to bring on new teachers. I don't know. That's not really necessary. It's more, hey, I've got this brand new studio. Here's your lesson block. I'm going to try and fill it for you. You get money. I get a cut of it.
Okay, and so you weren't paying them. So when you gave them their block, so let's say it was 3 hours on a Wednesday, you
Right.
didn't agree to pay them for the whole 3 hours. You would just give them and pay them for the time as you filled up that time slot for them. So if they started with just one student for half an hour, that would be what they got paid, with the idea that it would grow.
Right. And I was very upfront about it with everyone I hired. No one I was hiring, even now, no one, it's their full-time job except for me. So
Right.
these are working positions and working teachers. They do a whole bunch of other things, and then they come and teach for me. So, I hired people that were open to, okay, yeah, I'll take this block. Let's see how it fills. I gave them a very good per lesson rate so that they would be happy with it as it slowly filled, which it wasn't. It ended up not really being slow.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is good. And I want to come back to the marketing because you've mentioned word of mouth and Facebook there. So let's come back to that in a second. Where did you find your original teachers? How did you find them?
So I'm a local musician, and my husband is also a local musician in Annapolis. So the first time I just put out a posting on Facebook and said, hey, I've got this space. Who wants to come teach for me? And I made it public, and I had my husband share it. I had all my musician friends share it, and I pretty easily found some teachers that
Wow.
way.
Okay. Geez, that's a really simple way to do it, really.
Yeah, it's not that simple anymore, but
No.
it was great for that first round of teachers.
Absolutely. And so I assume you then interviewed these people. What are a couple of tips you would give to other teachers about interviewing and finding the right fit?
So I think that just looking at their resume says a lot when you're looking for teachers. I want my teachers to be fun and engaging, and you can kind of tell people's personalities from their resumes or just from your first interaction with them. So now, for example, now I use Indeed, and some people just throw out resumes and it's nothing, but the ones that actually take the care and have the experience that you're looking for, that's already a great start. Then you can just tell more about them from an initial phone interview. And then after that, I do an in-person interview. But by the time I have an in-person interview with someone, I pretty much already know whether I'm going to hire them or not.
Okay. And I assume you would only spend the time on people you were likely to hire.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's been a rare instance when I haven't hired someone by the time they've gotten to the in-person interview because I've weeded out, who I think would really be a good fit. But I think that all teachers should really look at personality over anything else. I mean, ability to teach, that's a given.
It helps.
But
yeah.
The second most important thing is personality. Is this person going to be able to relate to kids and students? Is this person going to be able to teach students well and make them feel comfortable by relating to them? Because it's so important.
Do you get your teachers to teach in front of you or teach you?
Yes. They all have to give me a fake lesson before they hired.
Yeah, good. And I think that's really important. I mean, if you're hiring a teacher, you want to see them teach. That's their core business. But I agree with what you're saying about the personality being important. And you can pick up much of that at first meeting with a lot of people. You mentioned Indeed. What's Indeed?
Indeed is a website for hiring. You can do it paid or unpaid. I usually, when I'm looking for someone, I put $50 a month into it. It's just Indeed.com. It seems to be, I don't know, it seems to get a lot of hits for music teachers.
Right. Okay. Also, it's a job board kind of software.
It's a job board, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay, great. No, that's a good tip. I hadn't heard of it, so I don't know if it's mainly US based, but worth checking out for people interested in hiring.
It's Indeed.com.
Yeah. So you hired your first couple of teachers. You filled up their time. When did you decide to? And did they teach voice as well as you?
Well, I hired a piano teacher. I hired a voice teacher who specialized in musical theater and pop music. And I hired a guitar teacher. Right. So I started with one of each of the basics, things that go well with singing.
And so by this stage, you must have migrated into 3 rooms.
2 rooms.
2 rooms.
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody shared a room, and you then obviously had to invest in a piano, but you probably had a piano before from your vocal teaching, right?
Yeah, I already had a piano from in the main room, and then the smaller room, I bought some weighted digital pianos.
Right. Great. And so at what point did you quit teaching elementary school?
So last January, from September 2017 to January 2017, this is when I started figuring out things like Google AdWords marketing, when word of mouth. Annapolis is a small city, so people talk, and I became the buzz.
Right.
So my studio doubled in size from from September of 2017 to January of 2018. So I had 100 students.
So that was to January this year.
Yeah. No. January of this year. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
right.
I had 100 students in September, and by January I had over 200.
That is utterly phenomenal.
It was insane. And I was still adding programs which helped to it. Word of mouth, the Google marketing, the Facebook marketing continuing. I spent the summer working with a business coach to get everything organized, and that really helped to take out any anxiety that was blocking me from growing the business. Mm-hmm. But she also gave me these tools to help get organized and start automating things so that I wasn't bogged down. So I really prepared for the growth, and I didn't know if it was going to happen, but it did, which was great.
Congratulations.
And one day I just went I had already gone half-time at my elementary school at that point to help to accommodate the growth. And by February, I just walked into my principal's office and said, "I'm so sorry. My music school has gotten huge. I can't do both jobs anymore." And I took a leave of absence for the rest of the year, because you can't quit mid-year as an elementary school teacher.
Okay. So February, so your end of year is June or August, somewhere around there?
June is the end of our year, but I couldn't complete the year. I was going crazy. I was on the verge of a breakdown because there were no hours in the day anymore. So.
Yep. Well, I was a school teacher as well before business took over, and so I know well that feeling of doing 2 jobs full time. It's utterly exhausting, and such a relief when you can finally focus on one thing. Mm-hmm. So you took a leave of absence in February, which meant you left, but you weren't formally discharged, or whatever the word is, cancelled off the books until the end of that year, and so you never went back from February.
I never went back from February.
Right.
No.
And happy with that decision?
So happy. It was the best decision you made.
But you did it really well. I mean, it wasn't, by the time you actually did it, it wasn't a huge risk, really, because you'd seen the growth. You had the business coach supporting you. You obviously knew what you were doing. So it was like, okay, the time's right. Right.
It was just one of those things where you want that to happen. You have it as part of your plan, but you want to do it. I'm not a risk taker, which is why I had one, location and slowly added rooms until I had 4 rooms. And even this new location that you're seeing behind me, not a risk taker. I found the right place with the right rent, and it took me 8 months. So the same thing with teaching elementary school. I held off until I absolutely couldn't anymore. And I knew it was the right time to take a step back and, really nurture the business.
So give us an overview of where you're at now with your numbers. And I believe you've just changed location in the last month or so.
So we just moved into this new location 2 weeks ago to the day. We did we already had a full schedule of students. We're a month into our fall season, and we literally picked everything up and plopped it back down into this location now.
Wow.
It has 7 lesson rooms, which is amazing. It's got 1 medium-sized room. It's got 5 smaller lesson rooms for private lessons. And then it's got this giant space, which we're currently transforming into a venue. So we have a stage being built. There's stage lighting that's going in on Friday.
Wow.
The numbers, yeah. So it's been crazy. Numbers were up to somewhere between 240 and 250 enrolled at this point.
It's amazing.
My goal by May is to have 300 enrolled. And I think I can do it.
Wow.
I don't know. I'm also 27 weeks pregnant and due for a child in January.
Oh my goodness.
I think we're going to try and have 300 enrolled by May. That's the goal.
Fantastic. So just picking up that thread, you're going to need a manager of some sort, I would guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my next step. Now that we've completed the move, I've reached out. I teach about 20 hours of classes each week, and they're generally the big group classes. I don't teach very many private students except for the very best. So
of course.
7 private
You're allowed
students.
to do that.
Exactly. So I've just reached out to my big network of everybody I know, and I have posts on Indeed for people to cover me for my maternity leave. I've had some people reach out that want to do the admin work while I'm out, because that's very important. I know I will not be able to step away 100%. It's just not part of my personality, but I do need someone there handling the day-to-day. And I've got some interns too that are here to help me. So, over the next 3 months, somehow I have to pass these reins that I've held on for the past 5 years, but I'll be able to do it.
Well, I think it's actually going to be really great for the future for you, because if you can get it to the point where you can step back, then you can do one of two things. One is to look more strategically at your current business and continue to build it without having to be in it all the time. Secondly, you could start looking over the horizon to what the next thing is that you're going to conquer, because it sounds like you've got an amazing drive.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's always new things that we want to add. I know some of my teachers have talked about adding kind of a School of Rock aspect to the studio. Just something small where there's a house band that could accompany different things. So that might be the next step. Just adding private lessons is the next step. Basically anything I think of,
right?
I kind of add it. You're right.
I don't think you've got any shortage there.
No, some of them are failures, but the ones that aren't failures, I run with it, But, I've been automating things. I spent all summer automating even more for when this maternity leave takes place. And you're right. I need someone that can be there taking the time to answer emails and do some of the smaller things so that I can take a step back and look at some of the more bigger picture things, as you said.
Now, a quick word from our sponsor, My Music Staff. Most of you have already heard about My Music Staff and how their software helps thousands of music teachers manage their businesses more efficiently. They handle all of your student management issues, scheduling, billing, and so much more. It's what I personally use in my own studio, and it's no surprise why it's the leading studio management software. What I think really makes My Music Staff stand out is its community-driven development and personal approach to customer support. It was such a pleasant surprise jumping into My Music Staff for the first time and realizing how in tune it was with my business and the ins and outs of a music studio. Since they partner with the music community to develop their software, they've been able to anticipate what teachers need and are constantly improving their software to exceed expectations. And a more recent example of responding to community feedback was the addition of a very popular feature, streaming video and audio files directly within the My Music Staff app. And that means that no longer do you have to download files to your device. So it makes it incredibly easy to share content with your students. My Music Staff is super easy to get up and running. The transition away from paper and spreadsheets is painless. If you do need help, the quality of support is second to none, and you'll always get a fully personalised response. I have yet to see the level of attention and care I receive from My Music Staff provided by any other software platforms I use, and I use a lot of software in my business. So what have you got to lose? Just go to mymusicstaff.com and sign up for their free 30-day trial today. All right, so there's a number of kind of loose threads that I want to still dive into. The first one is the finding your new location. If it took 8 months, it was obviously a challenge. So can you let us in on the process? How did you find that location? What were some of the challenges, and what would be your advice to other teachers?
Sure. So when I doubled in size, the location I was previously at was no longer viable. There's no parking. We're in a downtown area. So parents were getting upset. The other tenants were getting upset because we had 4 rooms making loud noises all the time. My landlord had moved his office into the building, and he, saw how loud we were and was outside patrolling the halls constantly, like telling everyone to be quiet.
Oh,
and
no.
It was a situation. I'm so happy I still continued to grow through it, but it was tense. So as soon as I realized how big of a problem it was, I found a realtor, and we just started looking nonstop from January to June. But Annapolis, we're 45 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. It's a very expensive area. It's a well-to-do area. And commercial real estate there's not much, and it's very expensive.
Okay.
So I learned a lot during the process. The first thing that I think everyone should know is that there's retail space, there's office space, and there's warehouse space. And if you own a music school and it's already kind of successful, you don't necessarily need a retail spot with perfect visibility. Maybe I needed that to start. I had great visibility on a main road, and that helped with the marketing, but that's not why I grew. And I had to let go of the idea of having a retail space where everybody could see me. That took a very long time. The retail spaces are more than double the price of the warehouse spaces.
Right.
So keep that in mind.
And they will also be in more congested areas with closer neighbors and things like that too.
Right. So you're going to probably run into problems.
Right.
So, I looked at the whole gamut. I looked at the retail spaces. I looked at the office spaces. I looked at the warehouse spaces. And even some of the warehouse spaces, if it's in the right place and it's kind of warehouse retail, so expensive.
Right.
The office spaces just tended to not work because they're offices. We would still be loud. We would still be in a building with other people. The retail spaces were incredibly expensive, and I could never bite on any of them because they were so expensive. There were actually a few that I did consider, and luckily they fell through. The leases fell through because I would have been paying so much more money, and I would have had the stress of having to grow more when I don't really know how I'm going to grow over the next year. I'm already growing pretty well, but so I was about to give up in July, and my realtor and I said, okay, let's just do one big sweep. Maybe there's something we've missed. Maybe something's popped up that's brand new. And lo and behold, the space behind me, which is actually a warehouse space. See, it's just built out. Yep. It was a lease that fell through, and I jumped on it within a few days of when it fell through. It was fate. He walked me through it. It was the same layout of another place that I had looked, one of those retail/warehouse spaces that wasn't a built-out warehouse, and it was $4,000 more a month than what this.
Oh, wow. You struck gold.
I don't even know. So I walked through it. I'm like, this is great. What's the price? And my realtor looked at me and said, you're not going to believe this. It was $14 a square foot, which everything else was $25 to $50 a square foot.
Wow.
This was $14 a square foot. My mouth dropped. I negotiated it even lower than that. I negotiated it to $13.30 a square foot. The layout, we had to build 2 rooms and put a wall between one room. That was it. So all these other places I was looking at had nothing that was ideal for a music school. I walk into this place. It's the perfect layout. It's a very minimal build out. And it's like less than half the price of everywhere else I looked. So obviously I jumped on it. I put in the letter of intent. I got the lease signed within a few weeks. And Brilliant. It's not beautiful on the outside, it's a warehouse space, it does not matter, because when people walk in here, every single room's a different color. It's beautiful on the inside, and that's all that matters.
Right. And as you say, it's not about, for you at this stage in your business, it's not about how you look from the outside anyway, because you're growing through other methods, word of mouth and online marketing. So it's more about the experience for students and making sure you retain them, I guess.
Right, exactly. And I could see that the old location was hurting my retention. People didn't want to have to park and walk. People were annoyed. And it, like I said, it didn't hurt my growth, but I think that now that I'm in this new space, I think that again, I don't know for sure, but I think that I'm going to see my retention be a lot stronger, which is just going to contribute to the overall growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you advise others using a realtor, or we would call them a real estate agent here?
Yes, most definitely, because you're not paying them. They're getting paid by the lease, basically.
Right. Okay.
So
they get a commission from the lease.
A commission from the landlord. So why wouldn't you use a real estate agent or a realtor who actually knows things that might not quite be on the market yet, or about to be on the market, or just someone that can get a general idea and then give their professional opinion? It's just like hiring a voice teacher. You want a professional to help you out to find something.
Yeah, brilliant. And did he or she help you with the contracts and the actual lease, or did you get legal advice?
Definitely get legal advice. That's not something that a real estate agent does. They can probably refer you to a lease lawyer, but you want to spend the money to have a lease lawyer look over it, because leases can be really shady. This one had a couple things. They ended up being non-negotiables, and it wasn't anything deal breaking, but you don't want to go into that blind. I have a business owner friend who spent all this money on a renovation for a new location, and then the lease fell through because there was one sentence in there about being able to raise the rent incrementally. And so the landlord went to her after a few months of being in there and said, "I'm raising your rent $2,000 a month."
Oh, geez.
So that stuck with me very much when I was looking for a location, because that's the last thing you want to happen, is to have this perfect space and you put all this money into it, and then the landlord comes and you're out all that money before you even get started. So my advice would be most definitely have a lawyer look it over.
Yep, I would 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
So that fantastic kind of overview of where you're at now. I could ask you many more questions just about that, but I want to follow up on something else you've talked about twice, which is automation. For teachers that are listening and don't really know what that word means, can you explain it and tell us what you're automating?
So as your business grows, there's going to be things that you may have done by hand, or things that you may have done a certain way that those things aren't sustainable anymore as your studio grows. So if you have 30 students that you're collecting payments for, it's not so bad if you're trying to collect payments, but you're still, with those 30 students, there's still going to be 2 or 3 that never pay on time. And it's an annoyance because you have to keep emailing them, and that's a waste of your time. So private students wise, I think we have 112 enrolled in private lessons right now. The rest are group classes. I'm not trying to chase down 112 people to make them pay for lessons every month. So that's where the automation comes in. I use Teacher Zone. I love it. It's amazing. It's an awesome platform, and everybody signs up. Their credit card information is entered. It's charged every single month. You only have to charge or chase somebody down if the credit card doesn't go through, and then they can just go in and change it. That's one example of automation. Another thing is just streamlining your processes for how you do things. So for me, I have a certain way that I book lessons. I have a certain way that I answer emails. Automating all of that. Google AdWords is the best automation on the planet. You put up an ad there, you pay a certain amount a month, and it just funnels people to your website so that you constantly have leads for lessons. That's an automation of marketing that, Facebook isn't like that, at least the way I do Facebook marketing. But just to have that where you always know there's some type of marketing going on that you're not really doing much to, that's important. I hired a web designer because I was sick of updating my website. It takes forever when you have your own website. You have to reformat everything. Things go wrong. Now I have a web designer who I email him and it's updated within an hour. That right there, for me, that's an automation. That's something that used to take me, 10 hours a week. Someone else does it now. Right. So as your studio grows and more money comes in, it's definitely important to think about ways where you might have done things yourself before, but you need to focus on other things. So you pawn it off to other people. I finally have a cleaning crew in here on me.
Brilliant.
They come in twice a month. I know it's good. And my interns clean up on the other times. So.
Well, it's important to realize the value of your own time, I think. And as a business owner, we have to think, okay, well, how's my time best spent? Is it cleaning the floor, or is it setting up the next Facebook ads or Google AdWords or whatever it is?
Right.
And so, as you say, as you grow and there's a bit more income coming in, have a think about what you shouldn't be doing and see if you can find someone else who can do it for you, allowing you to focus on those business elements. I think that's a crucial takeaway. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, and I don't think that anybody should be collecting payments manually anymore.
No,
I see
it's ridiculous.
It's the biggest frustration for business owners is collecting those payments.
Yeah, don't do it. And yes, you're going to pay a little fee per payment that gets taken from a credit card provider. But you know what? It's such a weight off your shoulders. So please, 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 anyone who's listening, if you're still accepting checks and you're doing things manually, just stop and go online. There's plenty of different software applications that will allow you to do this. Many of them are pretty much free except for the card processing fee, and it's worth it, 100% worth it.
And just up your prices $5.
Absolutely. Yep. Many of us undercharge. So it's always a good thing to think about too. Fantastic. Look, I'm going to start wrapping things up. I wanted to just quickly ask you, where did you find your business coach?
So it was actually a parent of one of my former teachers. And she owns 2 schools. So I already had so much respect for her. She's already done it. They're not music schools, they're preschools. And she's kind of at that point, I guess, where she's taken a step back and she started a business coaching business. And she reached out to me and said, look, you're my ideal client. I want to coach women business owners to help them to be better at what they do. Can I take you on as a client? And I said, yes.
Right.
I said, why not? I'm going to try this. Let's see how it goes. I can't tell you how it's invaluable to have someone who's already been through it guide you with what you need to do. Sometimes you don't realize how stuck you are or what's holding you back until you have someone with a greater knowledge than you helping you through the process. So her name is Ann Loftus, professional coach. You're welcome to reach out to her, but there's also plenty of business coaches around it. If, for anyone who thinks, oh, a business coach, that sounds like a sham, it's worth every penny.
Right. Well, there might be sham masters out there, but you got to find the right ones. Thank you for recommending.
You have to find the right one. Yeah. Someone who doesn't own anything probably wouldn't be the best business coach to reach out to. But someone with greater experience than you, it's worth it to gain from their expertise.
So take us right back to when you first were hired in that music school. Did you ever think what would eventuate? That was a really badly worded question, wasn't it?
I think that at that point, my life could have gone 2 ways. I could have been an elementary school teacher forever, or I could have had this music studio. I thought I was going to be an elementary school teacher forever, and when I have kids, the music thing, the side project would go away. But as the side project got bigger, I realized, hey, this could actually be a really viable source of income. This could be a great thing that gives me freedom and flexibility to raise my kids when I have them, it's happening now. Let's see where this goes. Let me just try a little harder at this let me try even harder and see where it unfolds. So it had the potential to be there. And with each growth spurt that happened with the studio, it became more and more viable to the point where it was all consuming, and that was my goal. And I was going to get to the point where I had my own music school with my own front desk and my own everything. And somehow I made it happen, 3 months before I had my first child. So
well, it's been
where
a
there's
lot.
a will, there's a way.
A lot of hard work and perseverance, and I'm sure there's been lots of hard times as well as the good times, as in any
absolutely.
enterprise. Could you just tell us one, what would you say the biggest challenge has been over the course of this whole growth process?
I think that it's always a challenge with anyone who's passionate about what they do, to take a step back and remember that you need to have a work-life balance. Especially us as music teachers, we didn't become music teachers because we hated music. We became music teachers because we're super passionate about it. So, and now I feel the same way about owning a business. I'm super passionate about it. And it's always a struggle for me to take a step back and remember to go on a walk, or it's Sunday, watch TV all day, Sophia. Don't stay at the studio till 10 o'clock at night. Those little things I have to constantly have it in my head. I have to constantly fight to remind myself that I can't work 24 hours a day. When I do, I burn out. And you have to have a life outside of this thing that you created.
I have a feeling that little baby might change that for you.
Hopefully that would be a good thing.
It'll be forced change.
Yeah.
So last question, what would you say to a teacher who has a studio that's growing and maybe even a waiting list, things are looking good, but is a little bit scared about that next step, that expansion process?
I think that if things are going well and you have a waiting list, start looking at your options. If it's hiring another teacher out of your home studio or looking for a commercial location, if you're like me, you don't go too big too soon. You just grow as you're growing, I guess, if that makes sense. You see what the next step needs to be, and then you find a way to make it happen. I didn't rent a 2,000 square foot studio 5 years ago, or I guess it was 3 years ago. I rented one room for the lowest price possible. And then, I added as necessary. I added teachers as necessary. I added rooms as necessary. If you can do something like that, adding rooms, that was just a weird luxury that I had. Yep. But if you can grow according to your business at first, then eventually you can make a big leap.
Great. Well summarized, I think. Small steps is the most important sort of takeaway. Yeah. So where can people find out more about your fantastic studio?
Oh, so you can go online. It's naptownsings.com, NAPTOWN sings.com. We have that new website that my web designer did. It's got great SEO. It's got everything. That's another important thing. So just check it out, naptownsings.com. We also have an Instagram, naptown_sings. We post videos of our kids performing all the time. And then my contact information is on there as well if you need to reach out.
Brilliant. I'm sure you might get a few people reaching out to you, Sophia, because it's been so great having you and on the show and sharing all these ideas. It's lovely to see and hear the story behind people who are, getting to that next level of growth. And you've kind of busted through the next level, really. You're onto other big things. So thank you so very much for sharing so honestly the ups and the downs and helping other teachers. We will encourage them to go and check out your website, if for nothing other than to see what you're doing and copy a few things. If it's working really well for Sophia, then try it out in your own studio and see how it goes. So thank you very much for coming on the show today. I really do appreciate it. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Sophia. It was great to hear just how much success she's been having and in some ways how unexpected it was, I guess, but also just how much hard work it takes to get where she's got with her studio. And it's a very exciting time, of course, for her ahead with both continuing to grow, hand over some tasks while she's hopefully going to be able to focus on her baby too. So if that was interesting for you, then please do ask any questions on our show notes page at timtopham.com/episode 148, or you can connect with Sophia or me on my Facebook page. Just find the post for this particular episode. All right, the countdown is getting very close now to episode number 150, which is our last episode of the year. That's just 2 weeks away. And as I've mentioned before, we both have a very special episode with a number of my Inner Circle teaching experts coming on to talk all about the future of piano and music education. But we're also going to be releasing my Ultimate Creative Piano Teaching Podcast Bundle. 150 creative lesson ideas and counting. And so this bundle is going to be posted anywhere in the world. It's going to be available to you in 2 weeks' time. And it's going to include all our episodes in MP3 format, both at normal speed and also at fast speed, so you can learn extra quickly. You're going to be able to play these on any smartphone or device or computer or tablet, whatever it is. You're going to have the full written transcript to all the episodes we've got transcripts for, which is about 100 episodes. We've also created a topic index and a guest index, so you'll be able to search very, very quickly on your computer for the episode that you might be looking for. I know that's going to be a huge help for many listeners. We're going to be throwing in lots of our guides from the blog and podcast, a couple of lesson plans from some of our signature Inner Circle courses, and also a number of exclusive bonuses from expert guests who I've interviewed over the course of the last 2 years. So we've got lesson plans, downloads, sheet music, you name it. It's all coming your way, and it's all going to be packaged into this fantastic, extra special 150th celebration USB drive, which we're going to post to you anywhere in the world. We'll let you know exactly how you can get your hands on it and when and where and why and how much. You can listen out for the full launch details in just 2 weeks. That's in episode 150. I can't wait to share that with you then. Now, next week on the podcast, we're checking in with a teacher who took part in last year's 5-day piano pivot, and we're seeing what's changed in her studio almost 1 year on. We're going to unpack what the 5-day piano pivot was all about and how you too can take part in this year's release if you wish. Many of you listening will probably have been involved in the pivot, and for those of you who took action on the daily modules, it was one of the most life-changing experiences for many teachers. But I know for other teachers, you might only have been able to check out a couple of our pivot days, maybe only done a few of the activities, and perhaps life got in the way and you weren't able to complete things. So listen out next week. We're going to be giving you a chance to get involved again, if you wish, to see how you can pivot your studio in the coming year. I'm Tim Topham, and this is the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. Until next week, thank you so much for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude this evening's entertainment.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Creative Piano Teaching Podcast. We'd love to help take your teaching to the next level as a member of our supportive community. Use the coupon Piano Podcast for $100 off an annual membership of Tim's Inner Circle today. To find out more, head to timtopham.com/community.